Hey guys, check this out.
Hello and welcome to Check This Out, a podcast where we take an analytical view of the media that appeals to us as individuals and why. I am Al, your host, and with me today is special guest and not only enemy of the show, but arch-nemesis of the show, Jeremy.
I am honored. I am Archnemesis of the show. Awesome.
You're the first returning guest, so that automatically puts you as rank 1.
Fair enough.
If you would, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Jeremy Thomas. I am the lead editor and contributor, reporter, critic, etc. for 411mania.com, which is a pop culture news site. I am also a cast member for Final Show Films on various actual plays and the like, and generally a film of comic book, wrestling, horror, name it all geek.
So around the lines of, like, say, if I had to give it a name, pop culture.
Yes, pop culture. Exactly.
Yeah, just off the top of my head. Feel free to run with that for marketing.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So you're bringing something to the table that you enjoy and are passionate about. Could you talk a little bit about it in your own words?
Yes, I am. The first time I touched on one of my favorite genres of film, which was film noir. And this time I'm touching on one of my other absolute favorites, which is horror. This is The Night House. It is a film from 2021, directed by David Bruckner, written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski. That's a name. And starring Rebecca Hall. It was released last August in theaters, and this was legitimately on my list of the top 20 films of the year last year. In fact, I think it was in the top 10.
Oof, high praise.
This was one of the films when things opened back up in terms of theaters. This was one of the absolute first films that I went out to a theater to see. I saw this. I think it was Free Guy and Don't Breathe 2 in the course of a day. And two of those were good movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry about that middle one.
No, I like Free Guy. It was Don't Breathe 2. But fair enough. I know that's not necessarily a movie for everyone.
I should also jump in to just clarify, for maybe the international audiences as well, you mean horror. HORROR.
Yes, horror. Sorry.
Yes, just wanted to make that clear at the outset.
Yes, scary movies.
Not sexy movies.
Not sexy movies. Although some of them can be sexy too.
Yeah, but then they usually get killed off for being too sexy by someone in a hockey mask, for example.
I mean, maybe next time on we'll talk about one of my favorite subgenres of horror, which is the erotic thriller, because those are a thing.
Oh boy. Cool. So I've got my prepared list of questions that are designed to delve a bit deeper into that enjoyment of yours, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Question 1. Imagine I was someone who has recently been awoken from a coma or resurrected from being frozen in ice, or even an inanimate object gifted knowledge of modern times and sentience. So essentially, I know what media is, but I have never experienced any. How would you explain this without comparing it to something that I wouldn't know?
Okay, so one thing that I do want to say before I start describing the movie for listeners, there is a content warning for this, specifically suicide, grief, and trauma.
Yeah, absolutely fair.
So, but because that's basically what this movie is about. The Night House is about a woman named Beth. She is a high school teacher, and her husband has just very recently died by suicide. She is trying to deal with that, and she is living in the house built on a lake that her husband Owen had built for them. He was an architect. He had left a note which read specifically, "You were right. There is nothing. Nothing is after you. You're safe now." And that was the entirety of his note. She explains to a friend at one point early in the film. I'm only describing first act stuff in this. So I'm not trying to be spoilery. That's sort of where I draw the line in terms of spoilers, because that's all set up.
Yeah.
She explains to a friend at one point early in the film that she had previously, years ago, died for 4 minutes in a car accident. And during that time she died, before she was brought back, there had simply been nothing. So that's what she attributes he's talking about, but she doesn't understand the rest of it. Not long after this point, she starts to experience events in her home that suggest that her husband's presence is there. She starts to investigate and realizes that there's a lot about him that she didn't know. She finds a photo of a woman who looks a lot like her on his phone. It's not her. She knows it's not her, but it looks a lot like her. She also finds that he had designed a house that it was essentially an exact reversal of their home. And at that point, she has to try and figure out exactly what's going on and essentially come to terms with everything that she learns. And that is, without getting into the spoilers of the rest of it, that is the basic premise of the movie.
So, like, just sort of setting the pieces to give you that sort of trepidation, I guess.
Exactly. And then from there, stuff happens. It is a very much a movie that builds on tone and really well uses its environment. It's definitely more of a dread kind of a movie. There are jump scares, and there are very, very effective jump scares. But this is really more a more of a character focused horror film, and you're following Beth as she's trying to figure out what happened, and shenanigans happen, scary things happen, and she progresses from there.
Interesting. Yeah, even already I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
So, question 2.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, our positions are reversed, and I'm guesting on your immensely popular and award-winning podcast. I've just answered the previous question with your response verbatim. What stood out to you the most?
So, I was thinking about this, and like a lot of that is pretty basic setup for a horror film. And don't get me wrong, you throw that basic setup at me and I'll be like, yes, I'll absolutely watch that movie. That's not exactly a hard get for me, because I will literally watch anything, but that is something that I would look forward to seeing. The thing that would really hook me in about all of that is, and had designed a house that was an exact reversal of their home. Because if you're familiar, if you are literate in horror and have experience with it, or if you're interested in if you're interested in mystical knowledge and the occult and things like that, the idea of a mirror reflection of something is very significant. And immediately that makes me want to go, okay, what's that? What's that hook? I want to know more. That's what that would definitely be the thing that would personally drive me in. Because everything else sounds good and I'm absolutely there for all of that. But if you can take a horror film, which let's be honest, in a lot of cases, a haunted house movie, they all sort of separate into genres: haunted house or slasher or demonic possession, whatever the case may be. Um, there are definitely tropes that fit within there and sort of formulaic things that all of those kind of fit in. It's the reverse house thing that's really the unique hook that appeals to me.
Yeah, and it's like I would rate horror as a genre as basically if you had a slasher with a story,
Mm-hmm.
because that tends to be the elements that get left out. It's just like, oh yeah, you're in it for the gore, you're in it for the flashy substance, but there's no actual connective tissue realistically.
Right, right,
But
yeah.
like obviously there are reasons why camp counselors have to die and this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
But yeah, it's just like, okay, well, I don't care about the talky bits. Just get to someone's head getting cut off.
yep. Which that's unfortunate. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my Friday the 13th movies. I love my Halloween movies, as off the rails as they get sometimes. Um, but if you want to get me, if you really want to get me with a horror movie, you put in a compelling story. You do something like, and there were people that would argue whether this is a compelling story or not. You get me a Fear Street,
Mm.
or you get me a, um, keeping within the slasher as an example. You get me a Happy Death Day or something like that, where it's not just waiting to get to the next creative kill. And those kills are great, and I will absolutely sit down and watch all of those movies, and enjoy them if they're well done. But it's the story aspect that's really gonna hook me in. As okay, this is something where if I'm in a particular mood, this is what I want to watch,
Mm.
and those are the things that I remember.
Whereas, like as a counterbalance, for example, I am still weirdly relatively fresh to movies, let
Mm-hmm.
alone any specific genre or in depth terminology.
Right.
So the experience of having a story isn't something I'm fully used to.
That is fair.
So I'm dipping my toes in via the slashes because it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, I love all the gore and the big spots.
Oh,
I
for sure.
Yeah, I love seeing the big spot monkeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I
Yeah.
said, I adore me some good solid slasher films. Um, the I was just thinking because there I had just been listening to catching up on other podcast stuff, and one of my favorites just covered Friday the 13th Part 6. Jason Lives, which is the meta one.
Mm.
Um, and going through it, just I forgot how much I enjoyed that movie. And really, it's basically just getting from one spot to the other.
Yeah,
Like those are great. Don't get me wrong.
but it's like if you looked at the highlight reel for like Hellraiser, for example,
Uh
it's
huh.
going to be a lot shorter than the plot synopsis video that someone drops on YouTube.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
But yeah, it's I don't know. We'll see how this treats me.
Yeah. No, I think this is There are tonal elements in this that I really, really love. Um, there's a lot about I Love, which I know we'll get into.
Hmm.
Um, but this hits in now that we're out of the you're not familiar with media question.
Yeah.
This hits in a particular sort of subgenre of horror that has been very popular over the last 10 years. That there's not really a cohesive name for it. I call it grief horror.
Okay.
Things like these may not be movies or it's a lot of independent films. Things like Hereditary, The Babadook, Black Coat's Daughter, Relic, Dark and the Wicked, things like that, where they really get into just the concept of I call it grief horror because it's more than just grief. It's the processing of trauma. But if you call something trauma horror, then you have two problems. A, some people are going to think you said trauma horror, which is a very different thing. And two, trauma sounds like violence and gore when you're associating with horror.
See, just in my mind, it's closer to it like a torture than an attack. Because
Right.
it's trauma implies slow to me.
These do tend to be a little bit slower of movies, yes.
No, I mean, even without being set in a movie.
Oh, yes, no,
Yeah.
like prolonged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So saying something is trauma horror has, like, it evokes a particular imagery and feel that probably isn't necessarily representative.
No, for sure, absolutely. I think of this as an era where horror and film in general really touches on, it reflects society as it's moving along, right? So horror has always been really good at doing that. And let's be honest, over the last few years in particular, but probably over the last 10, 12 years or so, you have people who are coming of age and who are finding their voice, who are processing trauma from their lives in ways that it didn't used to be talked about.
Yeah.
Like the generation, but my generation too, but the generation before me didn't talk about their issues. You know, the idea of talking about the things that happened to you just didn't happen. Um, that there's a generation that's talking about it a lot more. You're finding that reflected in media a lot more, and this sort of subgenre really leans into that, which makes it cathartic in a lot of ways and really relatable in a lot of ways, but also makes it depressing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because you're just like, oh, I can relate, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a genre that I adore because it is open in a way that a lot of past generations of film are not. But it's also not one that I can watch all the time because, like, this is the first time that I watched this movie when I was this week when I was preparing to come on here. This is the first time I watched it since I saw it in theaters. And I liked it as much, if not more, than when I first saw it. But I also realized this is probably, and talk about this later, but I was perfectly happy having seen it
Like a one and done.
about 9 months ago and then now.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I'm not an expert in the terminology or any of the in-depth stuff as I've mentioned, but it seems like horror as a genre has always been representative of what society is holding back.
Very much so.
So if you take
Um,
your classic zombie movies, for example, it's just they're always slow zombies to attack because it's representative of inevitability.
hmm Absolutely.
Whereas whereas these days they are the more fast running zombies because inevitability isn't as a big a worry anymore.
hmm
As if we're honest, to how many people are making it to the end of their natural lives these days.
That is very true.
Uh,
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that, and you look at like, I could literally talk for hours about the nature of horror and that and this kind of thing, but you look at, I think the classic example, because it's a film that's been remade in so many different eras, is the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And
mm,
you look at in the and that whole style of film in the 50s, that was very much about the paranoia of uh, on one hand it played to certain people as paranoia of communism and that sort of thing, but also being afraid of being scared of not fitting in. And then you move up into the 1970s, it's very much about the Cold War and the all of the political aspects of that. And then you move again up to, I think I mean, it's been retold again a couple of times, but
yeah,
the next one that off the top of my head that I can think of is The Invasion, which, while not a good film in and of itself, is still that same story and is very much about the post 9/11 paranoia of uh, war on terror and all of that stuff. And I could talk about the difference between why the original Halloween works the way that it does, and why the Rob Zombie film, while it's not popular, works for the people that it works for the way that it does. And that's also, in fact, you can follow that film through film and see how it variously tracks the sort of the public consciousness about things and how it's preying on, not preying on, but it's exposing, it's talking about the fears and what scared people from 1974 to the 1980s into the 1990s, the 2000s, and then now. Like, these franchises that last a long time, you can see a lot of that stuff in there, and it's really, this is why I love talking about horror and watching horror too.
and this is also partly why I upgraded you to Archnemesis because I like, with all due respect, I love hearing you talk about like a passion and just listening and absorbing. It makes me feel like I'm the dumbest piece of shit.
You're
Is it?
not,
Oh yeah,
but
I know, but still, it's like, wow, that is very in depth. I wish I knew half of those words.
oh, fair enough. I mean, this is just, this is my life pretty much, which that's probably concerning in of itself, but like, I love looking at media and talking about media and absorbing it and learning from it, and what it says about people. Like, I feel like in a lot of ways, media, well, we laugh about it and people talk about how it's silly. Like, media is incredibly important to how we see ourselves, how we see other people, and the lens through which we view the world. It's
Yeah,
just absolutely essential.
like even a bad film or TV show or book or what have you, unless it's explicitly like a cash grab,
Right.
it has something to say.
Well, and Absolutely, and even explicit cash grabs usually have something to say. Like, let's be honest, every movie is at its core made to make money.
Yeah,
Yes, some of them are more blatant, like um, let's say the Fantasy Island remake, or
mm,
stuff like that. Yeah, there are absolutely explicit cash grabs, but yes, even those I think have a lot to say about the culture that they're made in. Um,
I was going to go a little bit more controversial and say some of the recent Marvel Cinematic Universe offerings.
I mean, I could see some of that.
Mm,
I see a lot of value in those in terms of particularly the Phase 4 stuff. In terms of, it's a weird transition period for Marvel because they are dealing with post Infinity War letdown.
yeah, where they had a plan.
Or they had a plan, and I think they do have a plan now. I think what we're seeing is the beginning building of a plan where, okay, I'm not going to say that Black Widow was one of my favorite Marvel movies. It wasn't. I still liked it, but that movie, a that's the one that I don't think is actively building towards anything except for building Yelena. I think that's the only reason that that movie exists at the point that it exists within the film chronology, and also because they couldn't get a black movie widow movie made because misogyny. But I think that movie has a lot to say. I don't think it says it as well as some other films,
Mm,
but it presents it in a way that more people saw it about human trafficking, about the importance of globalism, and like there's a lot wrapped up in that. By the same token, I think Shang-Chi has a lot to say a lot about how Americans view Eastern culture.
mm.
Um, And I think that movie and Eternals, well, again, Eternals is not one of my favorite. I adore it for reasons, but it's not one of my favorites because I think that it's so different. Um, those are the Shang-Chi and Eternals are the movies where they're showing us they're starting to look. We've already got the cis white male.
Mm.
Um, we want to start taking these wild swings story wise and also show people outside of that there's a world there for them. And I know that's woke or whatever that fucking bullshit is. Um,
Send complaints to your nearest alligator.
exactly. Um, but that is just as an important a part of what we're seeing in the world. And like I said, the lens that we look at, we see the world through as anything else. I would say that if you ask me about Marvel, we're so off base at this point. But you ask me
It's part of the
about
appeal.
yeah, for sure. You ask me about Marvel cash grabs, and I'm going to start talking about Incredible Hulk, Thor, The Dark World. I know you and I have very different opinions about the
Yeah,
Thor franchise. Um,
was gonna say.
I know. Um, but I think that era, I think the post immediate, like first films era, the Iron Man, Thor, Captain Marvel, the post that era was the point where Marvel didn't really know what they were doing. Because Iron Man 2, it's clear that they don't really know what they're doing. You look at that in the greater scheme of things, and it's two things. It's A, them desperately trying to set up for Avengers, and them not knowing what to do beyond that. So let's throw in Ivan Vanko and Justin Hammer.
Like, I was just thinking, it's more like I would love, for a multitude of reasons, to see what the world would have been without the pandemic, because I am
Oh my God,
positive
yeah.
they've had to basically destroy plan after plan to get to what we're currently seeing.
So a lot of it's been delayed, but mostly, hey, we can delay stuff. But if you look at, there are absolutely some interesting things in there because, when it comes to the films, they can just push their whole slot of films back. The Disney Plus shows were originally supposed to release in a very different order,
Mm. I
and those
also
play into the universe.
I also saw one specific rumor that astounds me, and I have no idea what that would mean for everything concerning the latest two films.
Okay,
So I guess spoilers for Spider-Man: No Way Home and Doctor Strange:
right.
Multiverse of Madness. Look, I don't know how true it is or not, obviously, but
Okay.
I did hear rumors that Spider-Man's whole deal was supposed to be because of America Chavez.
I don't know that that is the case because those two films were being written independently of each other. What I can say is that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was originally going to come out before Spider-Man No Way Home.
Hmm.
That may be where that speculation comes from. I don't know if they were necessarily, if America was going to factor in.
Yeah,
That
and
would be interesting if it was, and I can't say for sure that's not the case. And
yeah,
that would have been really interesting. To be clear, I really liked I adore No Way Home,
hmm,
and I only recently watched Multiverse of Madness because it only just came out.
yeah,
But I very much like that, and I'm liking it more as I think more about it.
yeah. But it's just like what would the shape of the world look like if
It
not
would be
for
so
this, that, or
different
the
for
other?
so many reasons, and I think a big part of why it was different is just the delay because the original plan, all of these movies would have come out very soon after Infinity War came out. Like if you think it seems like eons ago, but or not Infinity War, Endgame. Endgame came out in what was it? 2000 late summer 2019, I feel like. And then Black Widow was originally supposed to come out in April the next year. Like they were not planning to take a long time.
Hmm.
Um, I was thinking about it at this point when I with Multiverse of Madness. I was looking at it. Um, they were if the films had come out as released on schedule, we would almost be into phase 5, if not into phase 5 at this point.
Just
And we're just early in, we're maybe about midway through phase 2 or phase 4.
phase two. Oh boy.
Yeah, phase 2. No, there's still a long way. No. But yeah,
Yeah, just the world that almost was.
yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating.
Yep.
Uh, anyway, back
Anyway,
to
back
whatever the hell
back to
this
the
is.
night house.
Oh yeah, that's right. Question three.
Yes.
We can tell that this is a subject that you care about, but
Yeah, a little bit.
what got you to give it a chance in the first place?
So obviously, I am a reporter. I'm a critic. So it's my job to be aware of this kind of stuff. It's really rare that a film hits theaters that I've never heard of. Um, it's more common with independent films, which this was released by Fox Searchlight, which is their independent, quote unquote, independent studio, sort of like Focus Features or those kinds of
Yeah, it's the branch facility.
yeah, their art house wing basically.
Hmm.
Um, I had heard some buzz about this film coming out of Sundance Film Festival in 2020, which is January 2020. Sundance happens January every year. Um, and some pretty good things. And then that was January 2020. Everything went boom.
Mm-hmm.
And the film industry went radio silent for a long period of time. Theaters are closed. You can't put anything out. They were trying to trickle out what they could through, and that was, again, that's a whole nother discussion that could take another half hour. But regardless, the point is, Night House kind of went under the radar at that point. So we flash forward to last summer, and I was covering Fantasia Film Festival virtually. Fantasia is a genre film festival that takes place in Montreal. It's basically the biggest genre film festival. And when I say genre film, for people who aren't aware, I'm talking about basically horror, science fiction, fantasy to some degree. Most people associate genre with horror, but it also includes things like film noir, and most comic book films are considered genre films, but Fantasia doesn't really touch on that. Those kinds of things. This is the biggest one of those in North America. And so Night House was playing through Fantasia, but I wasn't able to see it because things had started to open up a bit. It was an in-person screen, and as much as I would like to, I was not flying from Portland to Montreal to see like 3 movies that I couldn't see virtually. Just wasn't happening.
I mean, what? That's like 20 minutes.
Oh, sure, yeah. But passport and blah blah blah, like that was just not happening. But the point is, I had heard so many positive reactions. I've always been a big fan of Rebecca Hall, who, for people who aren't familiar with her, she is the thing that you would probably most know her from is Iron Man 3. She was Maya in it. She's done a bunch of other films. Frustratingly, there's not anything that's immediately hitting my mind, but I'm a big fan of her work. And so that film ended up opening. Fantasia took place in late January to early August. That film opened in the US in late August. So I immediately went out to see it. I was absolutely blown away by it. Unfortunately, it did not exactly light up the box office.
Yeah.
To the shock of the world, after months of isolation, when theaters finally opened up, people decided that they didn't want to rush out to see a movie about suicide and grief. Fortunately, this movie, like independent horror typically does, indie horror doesn't make its money in theaters. It might if it becomes really buzzy, but it generally makes its money on home viewing, on what's called ancillary, streaming, digital purchase, things like that, home video, that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, has discovered sort of a life there.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tall ask just off the premise.
It really is. And even some of the biggest films that sort of hit that bleak area, like bleak, it is generally well known. Bleak does not equal good box office. There is a way that audience reaction is judged. That's called, in the US specifically, that's called cinema score. A lot of you hear this reference when you're talking about movies a lot. The cinema score was an A plus or a B minus or something like that. Most movies tend to score. Basically, what they do is the Friday night that a movie opens, this company goes around to theaters in major markets and gets people coming out and say, well, what did you think of the movie? What rating, what grade would you give the movie? Usually they're going to trend positive. So B plus is typically pretty normal. If you're going below that, audience reaction is not considered to be great. There have only been in the history of doing this, I think, 24 Fs of every movie that's been scored. They don't. They only score wide releases, but only 24. Almost every single one of them. Not to say that this is the only reason they are. Some of them are just bad movies, but almost every single one of them has a downer ending because you don't want to. That's not a crowd pleaser, and so
you send the crowd home happy, and they point at the sign. Everyone loves that.
Exactly. And then if you're lucky, it doesn't catch fire.
Yeah.
But that's a wrestling reference. But
on this show,
on this show, hell, you say. But so generally, a downer tends to result in a very short lifespan at the box office. It's what happened here. I think it did like $2.5 million its opening weekend, which is not great it's a fairly low budget film. And it is gorgeous and very well shot, and the production design is amazing. It's clear it's a low budget film. So it might have been profitable, but probably not. It probably didn't make a profit until it hit home video. Which is fine because that's what home video is for.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just I think the ratings is also weird because it's the exact what is the last thing you remember, just a flash moment.
Yeah, the whole thing. I don't love cinema score. I really don't. It tends to reward because first of all, it's only surveying the people who went opening night. So those people are going to be, if you went to go see a movie the night it opened, you're predisposed to like that movie, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be somebody who doesn't like horror movies going to see a horror movie.
Unless you have a different reason to be there.
Unless you have a different reason to be there. Yes, for sure. So that's problematic in and of itself. And then just asking somebody, and they ask other questions. They do market research for companies. And in terms of that stuff. And there is, if you want to pay ridiculous amounts of money, you can dig into some of the statistics of the answers. But most people, when they hear cinema score, they're only hearing A minus, C plus, B, etc. That's not. I hate that idea of how a movie is getting judged. I don't like Rotten Tomatoes percentages.
Yeah.
But it's an industry standard, and you understand why it's the way. I don't like it because it's not well understood.
And like that, it also counts out a lot of the people for like maybe it's a more cerebral movie where it's just like I need to take a moment to decompress, have a
absolutely
think, get everything in order. Did I actually like it when I think about it and I hate it, or vice versa?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cinema score is made for blockbusters and comedies and shit like that. I say shit in the very neutral sense because I love blockbusters and I love comedies.
I mean, that's why they keep getting made, because people like them.
Absolutely. Not comedies so much. Comedies are on the ropes for the last several years, but
bring back the westerns.
I mean, I wouldn't complain. I'm not a huge western guy, but it's been long enough. I think they can come up with some fresh ideas.
Question 4.
Yes.
For some people, a sense of community and like-mindedness are integral to their enjoyment of something. So, to your knowledge, is there a community around the Night House that you're aware of? And if so, what are they like?
So, not specifically the Night House, but I think when I think of communities around the Night House, I think of the horror community in general. And in a lot of places, the horror community is a very tight-knit community. It's definitely one that self-identifies more than, like, you don't think of like the action community or the comedy community. You think of like maybe the Marvel community or DC community, those poor bastards. Um, but I love DC. I love some DC movies. But the horror community, specifically in the places where this stuff tends to get discussed, cesspools that they are of Twitter and Facebook and social media in general, TikTok, Reddit, the horror community tends to be much tighter knit because I think it's a much more maligned genre. And so you will see, and I think it's one of the more inclusive. Yes, there are horrible people in it, just like there's horrible people in the Critical Role community or wherever the case may be. Overall, I think the horror community, and you can find horror communities that are incredibly inclusive and incredibly incredibly passionate and will talk about. And when horror movies come out, they will talk about these movies as they're coming out. It's not always great conversation. I will refer people to when the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie came out this year. That was a discussion that happened over a weekend. That was wow. But there is definitely, I think, a community there that talks. And specifically when you're talking about grief horror, there is, because of this kind of genre that it is, it gets associated fairly or unfairly with A24. A24 is a studio whose aesthetic is very strongly associated with these kinds of movies because they produced Hereditary, they produced Midsommar, they produced I think Dark and the Wicked, and a bunch of these kinds of movies. They produced The Witch, which I think is more trauma horror than grief horror, but still fits in within that same genre, to the point that a lot of their other films that are not horror at all sort of get they're unfairly forgotten about. Things like The Green Knight and Zola and Lady Bird and things like that. People don't think of those as A24 films. You hear A24 film and you think a slow moving independent film that touches on really traumatic things. So there's a very specific community around that. And while some of those are very pretentious, they use a term I hate called which is elevated horror. I hate that term. It implies that there is certain horror that is high art and the rest of it is just eh.
Like a garbage basement to you.
Yeah, exactly. The Witch is saying things, and it's about something important, not like Fear Street or Halloween Kills. Now, I have my issues with Halloween Kills, but that's not the point.
Like the one Back to the Hood.
Yeah, exactly. All of these other films, which are great or not, but they are entertaining to a lot of people, and I hate that they denigrate it. If you get around people like that, who still like this kind of horror but reject that pretentious bullshit mindset, those are my favorite kind of people to talk about media with, because they generally love this kind of stuff, and we are talking about something that is a way that we are all relating and opening up ourselves. So there is a very strong community. It's just a weird community that involves a lot of different Venn diagrams coming together.
Yeah, it's like the evolution of being the other, and they've had to
Exactly. Oh
put
God,
up the
yes.
walls for.
Like I am when it comes to the horror community, I'm in the queer horror community. I'm in the pro slasher horror community. I'm in the indie film horror community. There are all these different communities that sort of all come together, and everybody who loves horror, I think, generally finds those points where the different communities overlaps and finds their people in those.
And realistic, that's all anyone wants out of life, just
Really, yes.
to find your people.
Absolutely.
So at this point, we'll take a quick break from the questions and go to everyone's favourite part of the show, a word from the sponsors.
Oot.
Thank you, sponsors. That was great. I mean, have you done something with your hair recently? Just something very good about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Buy 5 of them unless it's the army.
Heck, by 6.
Yeah. Speaking of 5, question 5.
Yep.
There are many aspects of media that resonate differently with different people. What was your favourite part?
So I try to think about this, and there's a lot about this movie that I absolutely love. I am going to save part of it because I know there's another question coming up. And I'm going to focus on a specific scene because I think that this scene, it's early in the film again. This scene this was the moment that I fell in love with this movie. So Beth, she is, like I said, she's a high school teacher, and she is trying to process this horrific loss that she suffered, that she doesn't understand why it happened, and she is at the end of her school year. Um, and so she is in her classroom, and she is looking up. She's looking up different things online. Um, and I can't at this moment. I don't remember what it is that she's looking up, and she goes into this sort of daydreaming. You're not quite sure, and somebody calls out to her, and she comes to, and she looks at her. She looks at her laptop, and it is now she has been while she was unconscious. She was researching guns. She very quickly snaps it shut, looks up. It is the mother of one of her students, and the woman wants to know her son got a C in class, and she wants to talk about that. So Beth, this is the last thing that she should possibly have to deal with this at this point, right? Um, and she starts off trying to sort of explain why, and there's a moment where she just sort of a switch flips in her, and she just wants to sort of make this person go away, see to her needs as best as possible, but make this person goes away. And she goes, all right, well, he missed this. He missed this this makeup assignment because I wasn't here on that particular day. Let's go ahead and not count that. So that'll give him a B. And the mother tries to say, "Well, that's not what I'm here about." And Beth sort of puts the woman in her place very quickly. And it is a moment of superlative acting from Rebecca Hall, where you instantly, whether you have been in that situation or not, if you did not understand what she had gone through, you would say she was an unlikable character. But because you understand, it's a stand up and cheer moment. And you understand this woman. You understand why she's doing what she's doing, and you are in her corner in that moment, in that sort of fist pumping way. And at that moment, you are just at whatever this woman is in for, and whatever this woman discovers in the events that are to follow. I am with her for the ride.
It's like ride or
And
die.
exactly 100%. It is a moment that I remember when the first time that I saw it, it left me speechless. And the second time that I watched it, in the best possible way, the second time I watched it, I knew it was coming. And this is not a film where there are a lot of big, like, a grin moments. Knowing what was coming, I found myself smiling, just waiting for this. So that is my single favorite part of the movie. As a whole, I really enjoy how well, it's touching on something that I have never experienced, fortunately, in this specific way. It is able to relate so very vividly what what's going on, and make us empathize with her and make us want to be part of her story. That even it's not a perfect movie by any stretch. There are a couple things that I think it sort of stumbles on late in the film, but you are able to ignore those bits. The only other thing I want to touch on as far as favorite parts, the production design is gorgeous. And when you are done watching this, I want you to let me know, because there is a Twitter thread that I want to give you, where if I gave it to you beforehand, it would be spoilery, but it shows how they come up with some of these effects that happen. There's some digital work in there as well, but it's largely practical.
You love to hear that.
It's so good. It is so good.
Practical effects. It unfortunately seems to be a bit of a dying art, but when it's done right,
it's making a comeback, really. I think the more we get into digital stuff, that practical is always going to be there. And there are a lot of people, there are a lot more films that I've heard of in the past maybe 5 years that have been like, no, we wanted to do as much practical work as possible. Because they've realized, sure, digital CGI is great when you have $200 million to spend. Even then, 30 years from now, I love the Marvel films. 30 years from now, we're going to look at that stuff as quaint. Whether it holds up like say, Jurassic Park or some of the better stuff in the Star Wars films, we'll see. But I think it'll still be enjoyable, but it's going to be dated.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of another movie I watched recently, Critters 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is largely practical. It
Yes.
is not great, but it
No,
works.
but it works because it's practical and it feels visceral. Like, one of the great things about 80s horror is it is the goopy decade for horror in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that goopy stuff doesn't work when it's CG. CG blood is the worst thing in the world.
I don't know, I've heard bad things about hyper-realistic blood coming out of your computer screen.
I mean, okay, fair. But in terms of effects work,
Yeah.
CG blood it's the worst. It takes you. I will take CG anything over CG blood. But the more practical, the better. And the way that they made this stuff work in terms of the production design of the house is brilliant. Absolutely amazing.
Cool. So question 6. Following on from the previous question, if we can remember what that was.
I do.
Yeah. What do you think will appeal most to the general public?
So, in terms of getting somebody in, while this is a very mood-heavy film, it has its jump scares. I like jump scares when they are instituted effectively. I think jump scares have a bad rap because there are films that misuse the jump scare or overuse it. When they're done well, they're done really, really well. And this movie uses them well. There was, when I was watching it earlier this week, there were 2 jump scares in particular that got me. One, because it's a jump scare that keeps going. It's a sudden loud thing that happens, and the loud part keeps going. And that was particularly effective. And then there was one that literally made me say, "Oh, Jesus fucking Christ." I don't know if it was loud enough for my roommates to hear because I was in my office and the door was closed. But I have to imagine it was. I think those will help. Those will appeal, and I think there is a relatability to the overarching message in terms of thematically touching on the idea of everybody has experienced trauma. Everybody has experienced grief. Maybe not this particular kind of grief. But the theme of the movie is really about dealing with grief and not... I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without being spoilery. Dealing with grief in a way that is not trite and is not this is no hate against Frozen, but it's not just let it go. Because I think that is a very well-intentioned message that is utterly fucking useless in real life. There are things that letting it go are very important about, but when it comes to the things that you've experienced in life, it's not as easy as just saying, I recognize that this stuff has a hold on me and I'm not going to let it do so anymore. This is a film that is not interested in just doing that. And I think there's a lot of relatability in how that works. And I feel like the people who have really taken onto this film are people who recognize that and find a relatability in that message and those themes. So I think that's this. It's you bring them in, you bring them to the door with the jump scares, and maybe Rebecca Hall, if you know who she is, and the cool supernatural ghosty kind of aspects, and then you keep hold of them through those themes.
Yeah, you sink the hooks right into their soft, supple flesh.
Exactly. Interesting that you put it that way, because a little bit of trivia about this film. This originally, I don't think that this tells. This originally was at one point the writers, Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski, they had a spec script idea. They didn't fully flesh out the script, but they had a spec script idea for a Hellraiser movie. It didn't end up happening And some of the ideas that they had in that, very, very generic ideas, I don't think this is spoilery, ended up being incorporated into what they wrote for the Night House. And there is a Hellraiser reboot coming later this year that will be released, at least in the US, on Hulu. It's directed by David Bruckner and written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski.
Those sound like familiar names.
Uh-huh.
Wonder where I could have heard those maybe an hour ago.
Right?
Question 7.
Yes.
Say that I do end up enjoying this because of your excellent recommendation. What would be your number 1 follow-up? Doesn't necessarily have to be a sequel or anything, but where would I turn to if I wanted more of the same?
I'm going to give you 2. Because I think that this movie tonally is a mix of these 2 movies. Story-wise, not, but tonally it's a mix of these. The first of them is Hereditary. I think this is a movie that most people will think of when they think of another film like this. Hereditary is a film written and directed by Ari Aster. It stars Toni Collette, Nat Wolff, and Gabriel Byrne. And it is the very slow, grief-related, slow burn, supernatural sort of family trauma movie. That comes with its own content warning, which is the an exceedingly I don't know how to say this without being spoilery. There is a death that is exceedingly upsetting, and it is a younger person. That's the only way I can describe that without being spoilery.
Yeah, but I think that gets the point across. Yeah.
Yes, it does. It is a fantastic movie, though. It's not a feel good movie, but about trauma and what hold grief can have on you, with supernatural elements and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, with some very disturbing imagery. The other one is also a horror film that came out within the last couple of years, but this hits on, I think, a little bit more of the mainstream aspect of Night House, which is more mainstream than something like Hereditary, but not like a Halloween movie or something like that. And the movie I'm referencing is 2020's The Invisible Man.
Okay.
Because again, Invisible Man is, I think, a very good movie that has some very good jump scares in it. That is about a woman who is trying to process her trauma that was inflicted on her by the act of an intimate partner. At its core, that's what the Night House is about. Now, there is no domestic trauma. There is no explicit domestic violence instituted in this film. I think that's safe to say. There is violence in this film, but not that kind. So it's different from that. But I see a lot of the same themes in those 2 movies, and they are just slightly on the more commercial side and the more independent side. And they're both great movies.
Cool. I'll add those to my ever-growing list.
Cool.
Everyone's got a list. Go on.
Yes.
Just mine's a lot longer and a lot more common than people would think.
I mean, the thing about it is the more you watch, the more you find other movies that you want to watch.
Yeah. Or
So
you get
it's
told,
always ridiculously long.
yeah, or you get told, how on earth have you not seen this movie that everyone's seen? I can't believe you exist. You are pure evil.
Oh, fuck those people. Like, don't get me wrong. I will say, and I have said, and it happens instinctually, I will go, oh, you haven't seen that? And occasionally I will accidentally say, how have you not seen that? But that's that's always in a more of a, oh, I am so excited for you to be able to see that movie.
I think we had a conversation once where I brought up I haven't seen Fight Club. I've read it,
Uh-huh.
and that
And
brought about an expression of shock.
that was absolutely an expression of shock. Um, but again, it's generally in a, oh, you haven't seen that movie? Holy crap. And then the immediate thought in my head is, I am so excited for you to be able to see, because that is a movie that I love, and I would love to be able to watch that again for the first time. That's generally my mindset when I'm shocked that somebody hasn't seen something.
Yeah.
And also, I'm able to say, oh, that's a movie you haven't seen. Let me convince you to watch it.
Like through the medium of a podcast or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Question 8. Sometimes our engagement with a piece of media comes from a position of relativity. Do you have a character that you related to? And if so, what drew you to them?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Beth, 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 Beth. There are a couple other very good characters in this film. Beth's best friend is a delightful character who I was very worried was going to go down some tropes that I was not happy with. And I was very pleasantly surprised. She's a great character. But Beth, so like anybody, I have certain tropes of characters that I like. And I love, and people who don't like this film have referenced her as such. I like people that people call unlikable characters. If there is a character that is oh, I hate that character, there is no way you could possibly like that character. My ears perk up and I go lemming. Uh, um, and Beth fits that character, and I understand why people don't think that she's unlikable. She is, throughout the entire film. Rebecca Hall plays her with this. When I walked away from the movie the first time, the main memory I had in my head of her was that she was angry. She had this burning bitterness underneath the facade that poked through constantly. And I can understand how that would not play well for some people. There are certain scenes where she confronts people. She is a bitch. But it's understandable. The second time I watched it, and I already had a sense of this already, but you see the emotions that this character goes through. And you see this is a very emotionally raw and vulnerable woman for obvious reasons. Like anybody would be in that situation. Um, who is reacting, who is quote unquote unlikable because she is not reacting in the way that we want people who are processing grief to react. We want them to be, oh, it's okay, or thank you very much. I appreciate that you are expressing your condolences to me. Um, we want that, especially if it's a woman.
Yeah,
That sort of.
All that entails, yeah.
Exactly. We want that kind of. Beth is not interested in that. She is like the scene that I mentioned that it's my absolute favorite scene. She is not interested in being the appropriate person. She is struggling to deal with her grief, and she is desperate for answers as to why this happened. And she does not give a fuck. If she upsets someone, if her grief is not appropriate for what, if her grief makes someone uncomfortable, if the way that she is emoting in that particular minute makes someone uncomfortable. And we need more of people like that, in my mind. It makes her an interesting character. If I was in a scene with, if I was, talking to her in real life, I would be very uncomfortable, and I would probably I would have difficulty dealing with her. But that makes her an interesting character, and that makes her a character I can relate with and get behind. And I can understand her and how she's driven to do the things that she does. And that's because of Rebecca Hall's performance, which is, I understand that horror is not a beloved genre when it comes to quote unquote award season. But I was legitimately hoping, and even knowing it was never going to happen, legitimately disappointed when she did not get nominated for awards for that movie. Because it's that good of a performance.
Which is, knowing your background, pretty high praise.
Yeah, like there's not, like I said, I get that people are not going to nominate actors for horror stuff. Just like you're never going to see someone playing a Marvel character get nominated for an Oscar. It's just not going to happen. It's stupid, but it's the way that it is. So when I think somebody legitimately people should be looking past their bias. The Academy should be looking past their biases to honor this stuff. That's like, it was legitimately one of my favorite performances of the year, bar none. And that made her, that was a character. There's no reason for a sequel, and I hope they never do a sequel. But if they did a sequel, I would be excited to see Beth again.
Cool. I mean, yeah, as I've said a few times, my excitement is only building more to watch this.
I hope I don't push it too much, but fair enough.
In question 9, a lot of these types of interviews rely on the question of what would you bring with you to a deserted island in order to get to know a person. But that's not this show. What we ask instead is to picture this scenario. You're on a deserted island with no hope of rescue, but food, water, shelter, and all that you need have been taken care of so that you won't succumb before your natural time.
Mm-hmm.
You've also been provided with a single piece of media and the means to engage with it, and for you, it is the night house. How frequently do you utilize it, and how long would it take for you to be sick of it?
This is not a movie I can watch regularly. Like I said, this week, in mid-May 2022 was the first time that I'd seen it since it hit theaters in August of last year. And I am perfectly fine with that. I would not watch this often. This is one of those movies I think I would have a difficult time getting sick of, because I would be putting that much time in between it. But also because I think I adore this movie so much, and I think that it hits the right emotions for me, that I think it will always be resonant. And
Yeah.
I don't mind watching something over and over and over and over again. I know that's another point where we differ.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, I don't watch a lot of stuff because I'm watching so much new stuff as a rule. I don't tend to see stuff a lot on repeat. But this one, I would say I might watch maybe once, maybe twice a year, even in that kind of a situation. And I don't think I would get sick of it for a long, long time.
Yeah, you space it out to prevent burning out on it.
Yep,
But that is all the questions that I had, so thank you for indulging me.
absolutely.
Hopefully
Love
that's
talking about this one.
hopefully that's given people a little bit of a deeper insight into your perspective.
Hopefully
So
so.
now it's time for me to absolutely ruin the show by having a talk for myself for a bit and with a follow-up review from last episode's enemy of the show and self-proclaimed baby animal cutosity specialist, Helena, and her recommendation of Planet Zoo. Is this something that you're familiar with?
I was not familiar with it before I had listened to the episode. I mean, I'm familiar with the idea of obviously Sims.
Hmm.
But while I was listening, I did look it up. And it looks interesting. And I really appreciated Helena's take on it.
Yeah. So, for the uninitiated, if for some reason you're listening to this episode and not the last one, why would you? She did a much better job than I ever will.
Go listen to the last one. She does a great job talking about it.
Uh, Planet Zoo is a park simulator management game in like it's an evolution of the old Zoo Tycoon games. If anyone remembers those,
Yep.
you build your park, you put your animals in, you make your money. Hopefully, the animals don't die in the middle of it. But it does have like the evolution of like benefits from that perspective of looking back.
Mm-hmm.
So it obviously it is more technologically advanced. So you might want to just double check that if you were interested, your computer could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, that's an issue. Uh, but each animal has like it looks like they've done a ton of research into every single animal, like not even the species as a whole, individual members of that
Oh, wow.
species, because they all have their own like unique AI almost. But yeah, it's I cannot fathom the amount of work that went into it, which is probably why it took so long to come out.
Fair. Yeah.
But it's definitely a game that benefits from guiding you through it rather than letting yourself just jump straight in, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise it doesn't quite hold up. It's very good at letting the reins off without meaning to.
Okay.
So I would say, sorry. So I would say that I definitely will be playing more of it. I don't think I gave it a long enough of a fair shake in between episodes because I'm not used to recording back to back to back like this.
Fair.
But yeah, it's a 4 out of 5 game at the moment with the chance to definitely improve.
Very nice.
If you want to get an idea of some of the ridiculous psychopathic behavior that you can get up to in the game, because God, you can get away with a lot.
I'm sure.
There are a couple of videos on YouTube by Let's Game It Out, the
Okay.
account, and it's like, oh, I built a zoo on the moon, and oops, I forgot about oxygen. Or
Oh, Jesus.
I turned my zoo into the Shawshank prison.
Oh, my
It
God.
the guy that runs it must have some issues, and that's putting it lightly.
Right.
But dear God, it's funny.
Right
So
on.
I would definitely recommend that in conjunction with buying and playing the game.
Very cool.
So before we wrap up the final ever episode of Check This Out for this recording session, and 18th time I've made that joke, could you tell the audience where they might find you online and if you have anything to advertise?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at jthomas411mania. You can also find me if you're interested in my movie opinions. For some reason, after all this, you could find me at 411mania.com. I don't get to do as many movie reviews as I'd like. A lot of my stuff is wrestling news and some wrestling reviews. But I do try to get, particularly horror, I try to get the Shudder releases reviewed as much as possible. You can find me on Letterboxd at jthomas411mania. I think that's it. That sounds right.
Close enough for government work. Can find you through Twitter anyway.
Yep, at jthomas411mania on Letterboxd. That is pretty much my handle on all the places, the TikToks, the Talks, the Instas, the Facebooks, etc.
GeoCities?
I know I believe my GeoCities username was Raven Feather still. Or no, Fuzzy Raven with a Y and not an E.
Yeah.
Because I was not around for One Mania at that point. And also I was much younger than I am now.
So everyone look that up and just get back to us with all the embarrassing
details.
details.
I hope that still doesn't still exist. You can find me on Final Show Films actual plays, several of them. You can possibly, I'm saying this now so that I force myself to actually try to get it going at some point. You can possibly find me doing a horror podcast at some point in the near future. There is already a Twitter account for it, which is Dark Prism Pod.
Heard it here first, folks.
Get around to doing
it's a guarantee.
It is a guarantee. But yeah, etc., etc., etc.
And on that note, I've been El.
And I've been Jeremy.
And this has been Check This Out, a podcast of media positivity. And remember, all roads lead to glass houses.